All right. Well, welcome to the second session of the Curious Minds Collective. I'm Ryan McMillan from Corporate Central, and today we're going to be diving into fraud detection and specifically ACH fraud and how Beastro is evolving to help credit unions stay ahead. Now, if you're new here to the Curious Minds Collective, this is a monthly 30-minute collaborative series hosted by us at Corporate Central that really brings together credit union professionals to share ideas, provide feedback, and collaborate on shaping the future of our products and innovations. Now, last month we discussed a know your business solution. This month, of course, is fraud. And next month will be something different. And so the topics will change every month. And so we just wanted to welcome you here and thank you. We're going to have some polls and some time to talk about to get a little bit collaborative and talk about fraud and some of the things that are going on inside of credit unions. But to get started, I wanted to jump right into a poll. And so, Mari, if you wouldn't mind just pulling up that first poll, how does your credit union currently handle ACH transaction validation? Are we doing like a manual review of account details, automated validation using some of your own internal systems? Maybe you're using a third-party fraud prevention tool. Maybe there's no formal validation process in place, or maybe just isn't your area. We'll give everyone a minute or two to complete that. About 10 more seconds here, and we'll close the poll and we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, we can move on. Now, ACH fraud is evolving. It's not just a big bank problem. It's hitting credit unions of all shapes and sizes. And it's not just about catching fraud after the fact. What we're trying to do is prevent it before it happens. And that's why real-time validation is so critical. Now, what we're building is Beastro fraud detection, which gives you the tools to just do that without adding a bunch of complexity to your workflow. Obviously, the fraudsters are getting smarter with new fake identities, closed accounts, out of pattern transactions, and we're really trying to help you act before that money moves. And what I want to talk about next is a little bit about how the product we're designing may look. And so Beastro fraud detection is really based, or it's embedded directly into your ACH workflow. It can check account status, confirm ownership, look at transaction patterns, and this all happens in real time. Then it can flag the high risk accounts before the money moves by returning you or your staff an actionable score and recommendation. So really, it's like having a smart fraud analyst built right into Beastro. And a little bit about how it works behind the scenes is, Beastro is using this real-time scoring algorithm, identity matching, and data from thousands of financial institutions to validate transactions. Now, you can configure these decisioning thresholds like flagging a transaction over a certain amount or score. We're also going to build into Beastro the ability to accept, warn, or decline transactions as they're flowing through the ACH workflows. Now, this will help us, meet some of our compliance needs, but it's not just about the fraud. It's about that compliance, speed, and trust. And Beastro is going to help meet those NACHA validation requirements, hopefully reduce some operational friction, deliver a better experience to your members. And whether it's about setting up external accounts, funding loans, or processing payments, we're going to give you that confidence that those transactions are safe before the money starts moving. Now, some of the fraud detection in action. So what I wanted to do is just kind of walk through the workflow here and what this looks like in a real world scenario. So this is how it flags a real transaction. So the member ACH transaction is initiated. That flows into Beastro, which does the automated validation and checks. Then we are flagging for any risks and giving you those actionable recommendations. Then you can, of course, take that action, whether we're accepting, warning, or declining that transaction again before the money moves. So this brings us to poll number 2. And Mari, if you wouldn't mind bringing up poll number 2, what worries you most about fraud at your credit union? Whether it be fraudulent account activity, high return rates, inability to verify the account ownership in real time, operational delays due to manual fraud checks, or the lack of visibility into fraud risk patterns. And this is going to hopefully shape some of the discussions we're about to have. And we're going to encourage everyone to unmute and talk about some of the things happening in the real world in your credit unions today, and how we may be able to assist in mitigating some of those risks, specifically with fraud. Let's give it about 15 more seconds here. Okay, we can move on. So this is where, we're kind of going to open the floor. We'd love to hear your thoughts, whether you're in operations, member services, or IT. How do you see something like this fitting into your workflow? What would make it more valuable? Feel free to unmute or drop any thoughts in the chat. And the rest of my team here at Corporate Central, if there are things coming through on the chat, if you wouldn't mind helping me voice those. And we'll use some of these as some talking points. Maybe what stood out to you about Beastro fraud detection? How are you currently handling ACH fraud risk? What would make this tool more useful to you, your team, and your credit union? And are there any specific fraud scenarios that you're seeing real world that you'd like to see addressed? So I'll open it up. Don't be shy.
Oh, I see David Murphy.
Thank
I see a
you.
hand up.
Yeah, I could see this tool being real useful with the adoption of real-time payments. And so one of our concerns, or at least one of my concerns with adopting real-time payments, is that fraud component of a transaction being initiated that is done fraudulently, essentially. And so having a tool in place that can try to mitigate some of that, to be able to real-time score some of these potential transactions, I could see that being a real useful tool to help us. Obviously, there's going to be some risk involved whenever you add a feature like this, but it would just help us anyways feel a little bit more certain that the transactions that are actually being requested are truly member requests and not fraudulent transactions that we have to then troubleshoot and potentially take some fraud losses on.
No, thank you. I appreciate you jumping in there, David. And one of the things that I have a question for you and maybe the rest of the group is, we can design the system really however we want. And so there may be some transactions, and maybe it's a dollar amount, maybe it's something else that, obviously, if it is something like a real-time payment or something like that, you don't want to put a lot of gates in front of that so it can happen as instantly as possible. But I'd be curious, again, for you or the rest of the group, is there, something that you would consider, letting through automatically if it didn't meet some sort of high risk threshold versus you having to validate or sign off on it? Again, we don't want to create a bunch of extra work for people, but we also want to make sure we're stopping things that should be stopped as well.
I think from our perspective, I would, at least initially, I know it defeats the purpose a little bit, but I would want to get a better handle on what types of transactions we're seeing before I just open it up in general. So I would probably put a very low threshold on it. Just,
Okay.
if someone's sending $100 and that ends up being fraudulent, I'm willing to eat that. Maybe $1,000 would be the initial limit.
Okay.
And then as we either put some of these tools in place, or we just get a better handle on what types of requests are coming through, we may be open to increasing that limit somewhat, so that if it's your standard, take a look at like what your average P2P transaction would be.
Sure.
And so if it's something like that, we're fine with those going through. And if we have to eat some losses on that size, that's fine. We have, within our membership, we do have some accounts with some pretty sizable balances on it. And I just don't want a situation in which all of a sudden $100,000 transaction request comes through. We don't do anything with it. because we just think that, okay, this is fine, the member requests it, and it comes back and says, no, this was actually done fraudulently. So I don't know. Starting out myself, I would start it out pretty low, even though I know that defeats the purpose a little bit.
Understood. No, that makes sense.
Ryan, just to piggyback off that too, I guess for the rest of the credit unions, I would be interested to know what thresholds are we setting? Is it based off of dollar amount internally? I mean, realistically, nobody's looking at every single ACH transaction, right? So what internally thresholds are you using that we would want to ensure that we're building in as an option? Is it based on transaction amount? Is it based on how many transactions each day? What are the credit unions, your credit unions doing as a threshold for these transactions? Quiet bunch today.
Maybe shifting gears just a little bit, you know, I'd love to know, and I think it would be helpful for the group to know, what ACH fraud scenarios are you encountering most often today? Is it having to do with new member onboarding, those large dollar transactions that we were just talking about, recurring payments, business activity, suspicious patterns? We'd love to know, and I think this would be helpful for the rest of the group to see what everyone is seeing kind of going on in their credit unions today as far as fraud.
We do have one comment from Brenda in the chat. Says we had a 0.47 trans that went through and then a fraud $3,000.
So assuming based on that, Brenda, it sounds like they did a tester transaction first to make sure the account was open and then came through with the fraud. I think that's a pretty common one that I'm assuming most of the other credit unions on the call are seeing as well. What else are we seeing? On the names on here, I know there's a lot of ACH people on this call today. So we really need people to be vocal so we know how to move forward with this and really ensure that it's the best for the credit union. So what other situations and scenarios can you give us?
Haven't had a couple of large dollar ACHs, like I would think one of them was 90,000 from the IRS indicating a tax refund, but it was clearly fraud. And I think we've had 2 to 3 of those in the last month.
Okay. And was there any sort of like early warning system, or was it almost too late once that happened?
No, for us, all 3 accounts were accounts that have had fraud, so they were on our radar.
Okay. Okay.
And that was pretty much the saving grace.
Okay. But maybe if it wasn't, it might not have been caught so easily.
Right.
Got it. How about things with like recurring payments? Has anyone had anything going on where, someone will hook up, someone else's account to basically draft their mortgage or car payment or anything like that? Sounds like maybe no. Does anyone got an interesting story about maybe how you found something and you flagged it and stopped it?
This is Stephanie from Corporate Central. I have a question for our credit unions. Are you guys seeing more incoming fraud or are you seeing more origination fraud?
If you're not feeling like unmuting, feel free to put that in the chat as well.
I can chime in. I think we've seen a lot more origination fraud, probably associated with our newer members, like setting up a new online account, never going to the branch, and then a few days later try to set something up on online banking as far as originating a transaction from another financial. That's what we're seeing probably the most of.
Good to know. Others?
We did get a few more chats in. Mary said Spectrum and Amazon have been reoccurring issues. David's been one of the lucky ones and hasn't seen a lot of ACH fraud, more checks and P2P. And Mary confirmed as well that it was more incoming than origination.
Oh, okay. Great. Okay. Is there anything else coming through the chat or should I move on?
Chat looks good for now.
Okay. Then that brings us to poll number 3. Mari, if you wouldn't mind popping up poll number 3. Would you be interested in testing Corporate Central's fraud detection tool when it becomes available in Beastro? If so, we'd love for you to share your name, credit union, email address. Obviously, we're going to be looking for testers to help us, validate the product, squash any bugs that might be out there. And so, if you might be interested in potentially being a tester, we would love to hear from you. We'll give people a little bit longer to enter their information. That may take a little bit. And while people do that, if you have any last minute discussions or questions or feedback, feel free to unmute or enter those into the chat, and we'd love to talk about it. We've got a little bit of time left here.
It's Stephanie from corporate again. I would just be curious from our credit unions, at what point in the origination process specifically do you think it would be most helpful for the fraud detection to take place? I'm assuming you wouldn't necessarily want it to stop a whole file just to review a couple of transactions. Like Ryan was saying earlier, we wouldn't want it to be disruptive to anyone. But ideally, when you envision your origination process, where do you think it would land?
I envision it kind of like OFAC checks that currently occurs in Bistro, where it flags some things, and then you need to go and resolve those that are flagged. It wouldn't stop the whole file, but we would have the opportunity to just review those that were flagged.
Thanks, Melissa.
That makes sense. All right, we can turn off poll number 3. And like I said, just any last minute discussion. If anyone has anything that you really think we should be thinking about, or a burning desire, or a specific scenario, like I said, feel free to put that in the chat, or feel free to unmute and let the rest of the group know.
We do have another chat that came in from Steven saying we have had a few foreign companies posting smaller dollar amounts, but a lot of items. So transactions under $20, but running a bunch. So fraud totaling thousands of dollars. Under 20, we have no chargeback rights. So that might be a nice threshold to think about, is if, is something getting flagged if all of a sudden you just got 20 transactions in the same batch from the same company, or, something more than that, thinking payroll as well. But that's definitely a threshold we can keep in mind as well.
Yeah, for sure. I could see how people were trying to fly under the radar with that.
Yeah.
So we could potentially put in some hooks to find number of transactions with a specific company or period of time even.
And with that being said too, if you're on ACH within Beastro, all of those files are running through. So there is some potential that it's not just going to be flagging it because you have had all of these transactions coming in. There might be potential that if that same company just did the same thing to 3 other credit unions and it's all in Beastro, now there's 120 transactions that just came in, but you only know about 12 of them. So that might be a potential for a red flag as well.
Okay. Anything else come in? All right. Well, if you think of anything else, you can feel free to reach out to the Corporate Central team. We're going to have our next Curious Minds Collective session on Wednesday, September 24th at 10 a.m. The topic is still to be determined, but we'll be sending out communications as it gets a little closer to that. We certainly appreciate you joining today and your feedback that you've given, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.